The story begins in the year 1940, during World War II, when Hitler's army attacks Norway, enslaving its people. Many towns are burned down, civilians are brutally killed, and German soldiers seize control of important places. 3 years later, in 1943, a group of Norwegian soldiers is trained in Scotland under the British Army. They are taught how to sabotage German military bases and Air Force camps. As part of Operation Red, 12 specially selected soldiers are sent to carry out the mission. However, things go wrong, and 3 months later, 11 of the 12 are captured and killed by the Germans. The story then focuses on the only survivor, a soldier named Jan Baalsrud, and how he escapes Hitler's army, surviving against all odds. 3 months earlier, German soldiers surrounded the Norwegian unit and attacked their boat, destroying it. 11 soldiers were captured, but Jan hid behind a rock and, when the moment was right, escaped. The Germans shot at him, and one bullet hit his toe, causing him to bleed. To evade capture, Jan created fake footprints in the snow to confuse the Germans. This strategy worked, and he escaped. By nightfall, he reached a frozen river. Knowing he'd face a painful death if caught, Jan jumped into the icy water and swam across, despite the freezing temperatures. The Germans used flares and torches to search for him but found no sign. Believing he couldn't survive the cold water, the Germans assumed he was dead, except for Krut, a suspicious officer. Meanwhile, Jan managed to crawl out of the river but was severely frostbitten and weak. He was rescued by a couple who brought him home, gave him dry clothes, treated his wounds, and saved his life. Back at the German camp, Krut interrogated the 11 captured soldiers. They didn't speak, so he tortured them brutally. Krut tested the water himself and realized a man could survive in icy water for up to 20 minutes. This confirmed his suspicion: Jan might still be alive. Jan continued his journey with the help of local Norwegians. He crossed snow-covered mountains, battled blizzards, and finally reached a woman who bandaged his wounds and gave him the address of someone who could help him. He reached a house with a couple and their daughter. The woman told him that his comrades were being tortured in a hospital, and many had died. Heartbroken, Jan decided to escape to Sweden, where he'd be out of German reach. The little girl gave him a map showing the route to the border. German soldiers continued searching for him but found nothing. Krut was urged to report all 12 as dead, but he refused to lie to Hitler. Meanwhile, Jan reached the home of a fisherman and asked for help getting to Sweden. The fisherman agreed and warned him about Krut's reputation: no prisoner had ever escaped him. On the journey, Jan was almost caught by German soldiers in a village. An officer even mocked Jan, not realizing who he was. Jan remained silent and slipped away. Suddenly, a German aircraft spotted him and opened fire. He wasn't hit, but the snow around him collapsed, and he fell into a deep avalanche. Hours later, he dug himself out, severely injured, frostbitten, and barely alive. Still, he kept going. Krut, informed again of Jan's possible survival, sent more soldiers to search homes. Meanwhile, Jan reached a nearby village where 2 locals, Maria and Gudrun, found him, treated him, and hid him in a secret location. His condition worsened, fingers black with frostbite. Alone and in pain, Jan eventually amputated his own toes with a knife, screaming and fainting from the agony. 9 days later, Maria and her friends returned and began planning his escape to Sweden. They placed him on a sled, covered in supplies, and pulled him through snow-covered terrain. As they moved, a German aircraft appeared, forcing them to hide Jan under a large rock. Maria told him that someone would soon come to take him across the Swedish border. Jan waited under the rock for days. As snow piled up and temperatures dropped, he started losing hope. Meanwhile, Maria and Gudrun assumed he had already crossed the border. Later, they realized they had given his location incorrectly and rushed to find him. They discovered Jan buried in snow, unconscious and nearly frozen to death. As they uncovered him, his body barely moved, but he was still alive. They gave him hot soup and kept him alive for a few more hours, awaiting rescuers. Finally, a group of people arrived with a sled and began moving Jan toward the Swedish border. But he was so weak that he passed out again. When he awoke, he was inside a cave. The group leader explained they couldn't move further yet because of heavy German patrols nearby. Jan, now angry and desperate, insisted on continuing. The story ends with Jan's incredible perseverance, showing how one man survived impossible conditions, refusing to give up, even when frostbite, bullets, avalanches, and enemy soldiers tried to stop him.